Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone to the advocacy project of Conor Clancy and Aurel BockNelson. Take it away.
All right. Well, this is the IRS and Preparer Misconduct. It's really going to be tips concerning preparer misconduct. So, what to do if you suspect preparer misconduct, what to look for in preparer misconduct, and then if you have that belief that preparer misconduct has happened to you, some avenues of what you can do and options and resources that will be available to you. All right. Next slide.
So before getting into it, we just wanted to introduce ourselves to everyone. My name is Aurel. I'm a second-year law student at Lewis and Clark Law. I'm an intern at the Low-Income Taxpayer Clinic at Lewis and Clark, and I am an ORS enthusiast. My hobbies include sewing and music.
Yeah, my name is Conor Clancy. I'm also a second-year law student at Lewis and Clark and an intern at the Low-Income Taxpayer Clinic. I'm a fan of the land value tax, which is a very interesting tax, and if when we get to the end, we can talk about it more. And I enjoy reading and skipping stones. Next slide. All right.
So another thing that we just really want to drill in before getting into details, and if there is one thing you take away from our presentation today, review your tax returns closely before signing them. I know it can be difficult to know what you're looking at, but getting your eyes on it is the best thing you can do to make sure that preparer misconduct isn't happening to you and to make sure you know what's going on with your finances. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so something that we thought would be helpful is just giving you some reasons why you should watch this presentation. I know it may be difficult to sit through just a lecture on tax. Like even if you don't have the belief that someone is manipulating your taxes or taking advantage of your taxes, it may still be worth watching this. And I think the first main reason is so it doesn't happen to you. This is a very frightening event to have happen to you. And at the end of the day, unless you can prove definitively that you were not responsible for these false entries, the IRS is going to hold you accountable. So we're going to give you lots of good tips or just lots of good signs to show when tax preparers are taking advantage of you and what to look for so it doesn't happen to you. And, it's not always obvious when it happens to you. I think that's something that many of our clients and many people in general find surprising is, it could be 3 years ago and now you're receiving a letter from the IRS saying there's an issue and you may not even have known what to look for. So yeah, I think that's all. We'll comment on all of this, but it's definitely more topical than one would think on the surface. All right, next slide. All right, so what are the signs of preparer misconduct? I think this is one of the biggest parts of it is knowing what to look for. So I think one of the largest and most obvious signs is marking a return as self-prepared. So on the main tax form, like a 1040, for example, at the end of that, and we'll show you the form later, there is something called just the signature line. And on the signature line, you'll often see that returns are marked as self-prepared. Really, the return should be marked as self-prepared if you were the one to prepare them. If you are paying someone to go help you prepare your return, they should be signing their name at the bottom. It should not say self-prepared. This is referred to as ghost preparers. And, sometimes they'll dress it up and make it look appealing. They'll say like, oh, we'll give you a discount if we mark it as self-prepared, or you'll get like XYZ benefits if we mark it as self-prepared. It'll get processed faster. Those are not true, and the tax preparer is likely claiming credits or manipulating your income in a way where they'll harvest some of your refund, and that's it's not it's not allowed unless you have a contract allowing that. So again, like I was saying, taxpayers get paid for your refund. This is not always fraudulent, but it can easily be a form of fraudulent practice. There's a very common type of payment plan called the refund transfer, and in the refund transfer, what you have to make very clear is that the taxpayer is agreeing. They're saying, hey, I'm going to take part of your refund, and in exchange, you won't have to pay for any of the filing fees. You won't have to pay for my services. And that should be very clear on the front. And how it works is like H&R Block is a good example, so I'll use this. H&R Block will say, hey, we're going to send your money to a third-party account, and then like 60% of that refund is going to go to you because that's the money you made and you properly withheld, and 40% is going to go to the taxpayer, and that's legitimate. What is not legitimate is when you have to give over like your banking login information for someone to take money out of your bank account. No tax preparer, no real tax preparer will ever ask you to do that. They may ask for your account number, and you'll see it right on the 1040. There's a line where you can put your account number, but they won't ask. They're not going to say, hey, what's your Chase Bank login or what's your Capital One login? If they're asking that should be a very clear sign that something's not correct. Then there's the claim of improper credits and deductions. And there's all like one thing that's happening which makes these claims possible, and that's the income manipulation. So something we'll talk about is comparing your W-2 to your 1040 or a similar form to make sure that what the tax preparer is reporting as your income is actually what you're making. Because, if you say, oh, I'm making substantially less income than what's reflected on my W-2, you may be able to claim things like the earned income tax credit or get a greater tax credit from the child tax credit. So just looking for things like that, that is something that's very important, and it's very indicative of fraud or just preparer misconduct if you see that those credits are being claimed and your income is being manipulated when there's no real reason for that. And then claiming business losses. This goes along with the income manipulation. A very common scheme is getting a Schedule C and just marking down business losses when you didn't really have a business. What you should be looking for, if you don't have a business and you see a Schedule C on your tax return, you can just operate under the understanding that that is being claimed incorrectly. All right, next slide. Okay, so I know this is a lot right on the front, but this is what a 1040 looks like. We'll go through some of the boxes more carefully, but if you want to go to the next slide, I'll show you what the W-2 looks like. All right, so here's the W-2. These are like for plurality of taxpayers. This is what you're really dealing with on tax day, and this is like the main point. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show something that is very just like what you should be looking at. So as you can see, I've marked down income, and this is line 1A, total amount from form W-2 box 1. And so if you go to the W-2 in the top left and you go to box 1, you'll see the income mark there. So just a really easy way to determine like if your 1040 is being correctly is to make sure like that your W-2 is showing what is on your 1040. And really what you want to pay attention to is if your W-2s, like if you add up all of your W-2s, let's say you have 2 jobs, so you should have 2 W-2s during a year. If you add those numbers up, does that equal box 1A on your 1040? And if it does, that's a good sign that your income is not being manipulated. And if it doesn't, that's something that's worth reaching out to your taxpayer. They work for you, so you should be able to reach out to them and say, hey, why are these numbers different? And if they don't give you a good reason, don't sign that return. All right, next slide. So again, just looking at the whole return, there's some areas that are more likely to have misconduct in than others. If you look at the very end of the 1040 under paid preparer use only, you'll see I marked it as self-prepared. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where you don't want to see that your 1040 is being marked as self-prepared if you have not self-prepared it. If you see that, then don't sign that. You just need to leave that tax preparer, because they're not representing themselves when they're taking care of your taxes. And then again, under the refund box, you'll see that there's the routing number and the account number. Like I said, this is all that your taxpayer should need. They shouldn't need your login information. If they have your routing number and the account number, they can send you the money from the refund, and that's all they should need. And again, other things, you'll see taxes and credits, certain things like, oh, I shouldn't be claiming the child tax credit if I don't have children. Yeah, you just want to look for things like that. Just look through. Not all the boxes are extremely clear, but if you have any questions about your return, you should be asking, like, why am I reporting income in this box? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And your taxpayer should answer those questions. All right, next slide. All right, just next slide. All right, so what is not misconduct? I'm giving a bad story right now. I'm just saying, like, be suspicious of everything. And that's not necessarily true, but the issue with taxes is that everyone's situation is unique. So you really want to look for things that are unique to you. If you have children and they're, like, especially young children, and you're claiming the child tax credit, it's not going to be something that you should necessarily get suspicious of. But, if you have no children and you're claiming the child tax credit, that's very obvious that there's an issue. Yeah, and so there's just certain things that will happen. Taxpayers are humans, they will make mistakes. So if they say they want to amend a return, you shouldn't necessarily get afraid. They may have just said, oh, I mistakenly forgot to include information on this W-2, and now I want to go back and do that. And it's just worth talking to your taxpayer. A good taxpayer is one that's transparent and honest with you. So if you talk to them and they have good reasons for why they want to do certain things, and they can support it by showing the tax return and showing that, the box 1A lines up with box 1A, I think that's a good sign. But, filing extensions, getting a big refund, getting no refund, this is not necessarily signs of misconduct, but it can be if you were expecting something that was different. So, like I said before, you just have to talk to your taxpayer. You just want to make them be transparent with you, and a good taxpayer will make it all very clear. All right, next slide.
So what do you do if you believe that you're a victim of preparer misconduct? The first steps are to change passwords on all important accounts, like bank accounts, anywhere that you believe could potentially be accessed because of that misconduct. Also make sure other accounts aren't compromised. And if you feel the need to contact your bank or credit union and tell them you are potentially dealing with tax preparer misconduct, and that way you can get notified if anything happens within your bank accounts. Next slide, please. So there are two forms to know about if you believe that you have experienced preparer misconduct. They have very similar names, so I'm going to do my best to be as clear as possible and talking about them, but there's Form 14157A and then Form 14157. And these forms get filed together. Next slide, please. So beginning with 14157, what this form is a tax return preparer misconduct affidavit. This is what happens if a tax preparer filed a tax return or altered your tax return without your knowledge or consent. Some ways this misconduct may look and some reasons why you may be prompted to look into filling out this IRS form is if your tax documents were altered without you knowing, if you were using an incorrect, or not you, but if the tax preparer was using an incorrect filing status to generate a larger refund. This can be saying that you may be a head of household when in reality you aren't and you would be filing single. They can also try to create false exemptions or dependents to generate larger refunds. They may be trying to misdirect your refund or creating false expenses, deductions, or credits to generate a larger refund as well. Next slide, please. So if you're to the point where you feel the need to fill out this form and let the IRS know that there was tax preparer misconduct, this is an image of the form. All tax forms look really daunting to begin with. And don't let that scare you away. There are links later on in the presentation to these documents on the IRS website, and the IRS website will always have instructions for the documents. They may be a little confusing, which is why I'm gonna do my best to walk you through it today. But if you miss anything or have any specific questions, definitely give the IRS website a look. They have a lot of great information there. But most importantly, pay close attention to the instructions and complete as much of the form as possible. With this form, you're going to want to attach any supporting documentation you may have. And this is any supporting documentation that you have that can prove this tax preparer misconduct. You will also want to thoroughly describe the tax issue and any resulting loss of income you may have because of it, or any other tax issues you may have because of it. And if you did receive a letter from the IRS letting you know about tax preparer fraud or misconduct, make sure to attach it to Form 14157A when you submit the form. Next slide, please. So supporting documents for this form can look like a few different things, and there are a few different types of supporting documents that you will need to include. The first type is documents that will help establish that the tax preparer held themselves out as being in the business of preparing tax returns. That is just a very long-winded way of saying they told you that they were a professional tax preparer, and these supporting documents are meant to be evidence to prove that. What this can look like can be as simple as a business card this individual may have given you. It can be a photo of their storefront. It could even be a flyer or an advertisement with the name of their preparer saying that they prepare taxes. It can be any professional letterhead that you may have received from them, or any correspondence between you and the tax preparer where they are saying that they are a professional tax preparer and are in the business of doing so. Next slide, please. Another type of supporting document that you will need to include with this form is evidence of an interaction with the tax preparer. So first, you will want to prove that they're claiming to be a professional tax preparer. And now we're moving on to proving that you interacted with them within that capacity. So the evidence will need to show the tax preparer's name, the tax year in question, and do keep in mind that, as Connor mentioned, sometimes you may not know tax preparer misconduct happened until years after the fact. So the tax year in question could be a few years behind the current year, and that is okay. It will also need to show corresponding dates that show an exchange between you and the tax preparer being for filing taxes. Some of what these documents may look like, and just the lists of potential documents that I am giving for these supporting documents are not exhaustive. Be creative. If you think you have something that may help, do include it, even if it's not on one of these short condensed lists. I just want to give some examples of the most common things that you can use for these documents. So in the instance of evidence of interaction with the tax preparer, this can be any documents you received from them. This can be a copy of a credit card statement that was you paying them for the tax preparation. It can be emails between you and the tax preparer. It can be text messages. And it could also be a receipt from the tax preparer reflecting that you paid a fee for the tax preparation. Next slide, please. And last on supporting documents, if you are missing a refund or part of a refund, you have to file a police report. And this is because once you are either receiving no refund or not receiving some of your money, you get into theft land. And so you will want to submit a police report to any legitimate law enforcement agency. It depends on what county you're in, with where they are located. And the report will need to include the tax year or years involved, the return preparer's first name, last name, and address, and a statement describing the preparer misconduct and theft or lack of refund. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there are two forms when it comes to preparer misconduct. I've just finished talking about the first form, and now the second form, which confusingly enough is also form 14157, but this one does not have the A at the end of it. And form 14157 is used to file a complaint with the IRS against a tax return preparer or tax preparation business. And just again, you will file this with the misconduct affidavit that we just went through. Next slide, please. So on this tax return preparer complaint, what you will want to provide is any professional credentials that the individual said that they had or indicated that they had. And if you know it, please also provide any professional certifications they may have. If there is any employer identification numbers, if there are any tax preparer identification numbers, the more information you are able to give on either of these forms, the better. Next slide, please. So because I've talked about two forms, I just want to loop back around and do my best to clarify the difference between the two of them. If you believe you have experienced tax preparer misconduct, you will need to file them together. And the reason that there are two different forms is because form 14157A, which is the first form that I talked about, serves as an affidavit. That means this is your official written statement about what happened to you and how you are impacted. And then the return preparer complaint, which is form 14157, is a way to submit a complaint to the IRS about the tax preparer or tax preparation business misconduct, but it is not an official statement and it does not serve as an affidavit in any way. And that's why you want to file them both together. If you are filing form 14157A, you will always be filing form 14157 along with it. But if you wish to complain about a tax preparation business and don't believe that there was necessarily fraud or misconduct, then you can use Form 14157 individually and apart from the affidavit. Next slide, please.
All right. So you expect or you suspect misconduct, but you're afraid that you'll be audited for inquiring about your taxes. I hear this one fairly often, that you believe like, oh, maybe maybe this happened to me, but I'm afraid poking around in my old taxes is gonna cause the IRS to pop out of the woodwork and start auditing you. This is not something that we've really seen. The IRS and like just the revenue departments, they provide what's called transcripts, and this will allow you to see certain things. One helpful form is that they will show you what was actually filed with the IRS or with the revenue department. And there's also wage and income. So wage and income transcripts are just talking about like what the IRS will believe your income to be. So if you get these and you compare it to your transcript showing what was actually submitted with the IRS, it gives a very good idea of whether you're submitting what the IRS would expect you to submit. These will not, I haven't experienced that they will cause you to get audited, nor will calling the IRS. I feel like the IRS likes people to take proactive steps to try to solve these tax issues. So calling the IRS, as arduous as it may be helpful. It could turn out that you're just missing a certain form that the IRS would expect to have submitted, or you just want to ensure that your tax returns are all good. Calling the IRS can do this, but maybe you find out there's a mistake. Will amending your return get you audited? No, it won't get you audited in my experience, but this one, whenever you submit an amended return, they're going to scrutinize that return. So if you're going to submit an amended return, which I think the IRS will appreciate, if you do realize there's a problem with the previous return, you just have to make sure that you've dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's, because it's really going to be scrutinized. But it's, in my experience, the IRS is just going to look at that return closely. And maybe you're afraid that, you may realize there's a mistake. You might have gotten correspondence from the IRS. The taxpayer may have just skipped town. You can't find them anymore. And unfortunately, if you have a mistake and you can't show definitively that it was the taxpayer's fault, you're going to be on the hook for it. But it's not worth just like putting all of the forms you're getting from the IRS under, like tearing them up or burning them or hiding them away, because like the IRS is just going to keep writing you. So if you are afraid that you can't pay, there's certain things you can do. And this is something that our group at the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic does. Something like currently not collectible, which is a CNC right there. That just means that you're saying, hey, IRS, like I'm not in a good financial situation to be able to pay this. And the IRS has requirements under statute that, if you can show that you're not making very much right now, you may be able to get that. There's also installment agreements, which are basically just payment plans with the IRS. This is where you go, hey, IRS, like you are saying I owe this much. I agree that I owe this much, but I can't pay that off all in one lump sum. The IRS may say, okay, like pay us X dollars a month. And as long as you stay current on those payments and you pay that down, it's like this never happened. And then there's also the offer and compromise, which is the OIC there. And the offer and compromise just saying, hey, IRS, like I am never really going to be in a financial situation where I'm going to be able to pay this. It's just too much. And the IRS may say, okay, like we recognize that and we're required under law to come to some sort of solution. So the offer and compromise, just the IRS will say, okay, pay this one-time sum and we'll stop going after you for that tax year. And again, these are all corresponding to their own forms. but this is something that our clinic will help you with if you need help. There's also other resources available, which we'll get to in just a little bit. And yeah, if you just work with us or work with one of those other resources, we can help you get these things. So yeah, it's not worth just letting that fear consume you. It's not worth not responding to those messages, because there are resources and there are people out there who can help you. All right, next slide.
So, in summary, when talking about tax preparer misconduct, three important things to remember that aren't necessarily, I would say, have a lot of legalese. This is just good things to remember in general, is to look over your tax return carefully before signing it. This is going to be the best opportunity you have to look for preparer misconduct or any other potential fraud within it. Second is to trust your gut and don't be afraid to ask questions to your tax preparer or to any tax preparers. If your tax preparer is someone who wants to help you and is a good tax preparer, as they should be, they will be happy to answer questions. And if something doesn't seem right, inquiring into it is the best thing you're able to do. And then third is, if you believe that you have experienced tax preparer misconduct, to file the two forms together that we went through and include all the supporting documents that I detailed earlier. Next slide, please. And then here are some of the resources that I mentioned earlier. These links will take you to the forms that I was talking about. And then you can also use the bottom link to make a complaint about a tax return preparer. And what that does is that page just gives you more details about the two forms that we went through, and kind of describes the different situations you may find yourself in and the proper actions to take afterwards. So definitely use the IRS website and the information they provide on there as much as possible to your benefit. Next slide, please. And then there are also other free resources that aren't necessarily just the IRS website. The first is VITA sites. VITA sites are income restricted. However, if you meet the income requirements, what VITA sites are volunteer income tax assistance, and you can use this link to locate the nearest VITA site to you. There are also options in Oregon for free tax help. There are options in every state. I just included Oregon here because we are in Oregon. And then there is also ways to file your taxes on your own online for free. One of them is direct file through the IRS. And then there are also third-party websites such as Free Tax USA. And typically they don't charge for federal returns, but they can charge for state returns. Next slide, please.
All right. And then there's also us. We're the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. We help with these issues every day. And, there's certain things that just having some representation can help you with. Like the forms I was talking about before, offering compromise, currently non-collectible, they're pretty lengthy forms. So it may be worth, getting some help to deal with those. But there are certain requirements that go along with Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. Our probably the biggest requirement is the income ceiling. So at least 90% of our clients have to fall within a certain income. And I have a little chart there. If you look at the size of the family, and then see the 48 contiguous states right next to that, that is pretty much going to be the income limit. So if you make $52,000 a year, or $52,875 a year or less, and are a family of two, then you will be eligible. for help with the low-income taxpayer clinic. If not, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't accept you. It just means that you're going to have to fall into that 10%. But the closer you are to those income levels, the more likely we're going to be to help you. And of course, so we have the information, the email right there on the screen, litc@lclark.edu, and the number. So give us a call or email us if you need help. And we're definitely open to any questions if anyone in the audience there has any. Oh. Grocer, we can't hear you if you're.
We are unable to hear you right now.
All right. Well, we might have an issue getting questions right now, but if you want to, you can always email us. You can always leave us a message, and we'll try to get back to those questions. And of course, thank you for watching this. We both hope it was helpful.
And please take advantage of any free tax help you're able to find. Anyone who is working in tax is more than happy to help you. No one understands how complicated it is more than someone who works in it. So we're all very happy to answer questions and even help you find resources that we may have not listed here.
Yeah, and even if you're above those income requirements, it may still be worth giving us a phone call or an email, because we'll try to help. Even if we end up not being able to represent you, we'll still try to extend any help that we can. All right.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.